All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I am joined by Lee Ehlers, a real estate agent in the community with an incredible story. I can't wait to get into this one. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, Lee, here's how we run all the podcast episodes, man. I want to take us all the way back to Lee as a young man. You know, where were you born and raised? What were you like as a kid? You know, just kind of help me understand what you thought the trajectory of life was going to be, and then we'll build your story today.
No, cool. Thanks for having me. Pretty normal kid. Grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then quickly moved out to the Detroit area about when I was like 5 years old. Came out here with, I got two sisters and mom and dad, and I always thought life for me would be sports. Sports was like a really big theme for me. And, played football early on and eventually played rugby. But anything that was like tackling, fighting, wrestling, I'm in, all in. And what happened to me was when I was a little bit older, me and my buddies all saw Indiana Jones, and it's the first time I kind of realized things were different because they were all like, yeah, that was mildly amusing, cool. And then they went on with life, and I was like, no, my life has changed. Like, there was me before that movie, and there's now me for the rest of my life. And from then on, I was just obsessed with anything on screen. So Arnold was my hero, obviously, because I'm a living, breathing, red-blooded man. Rambo and any crappy 80s action movie I was in. And I'd bump into people, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, I liked Out for Blood or whatever. And I was like, well, I saw it 8,000 times. And they were like, oh, I just kind of see stuff on TV, or Marked for Death, or like pretty much any movie that people have heard of or kind of seen. I've just like binge and memorize. And what I kind of inherently picked up on is there's a way to tell a story, and there's stuff that I would really respond to, and it would stick with me, and then I would talk to like my sister, and she's like, that was stupid. And trying to figure out what connects people storytelling-wise, what aspects of that did. And again, this is me as a little kid, and so everybody else is just like, they just consume it, and they move on from it, where I would be like stuck on things. And with sports, I liked it because there was a story there as well, where it's like, those are the bad guys, we're the good guys, here's what we're fighting over. The story is very clear. And with things growing up in my family, like there was, families, there's politics that get involved, there's people that are to the left, people to the right, there's people that like certain presidents or didn't. Sports was like easy. Like there is, like, we all hate the Yankees, right? Absolutely, F those guys. And then we just root against the Yankees. With movies, it was similar. Like, no one's rooting for the Joker. Nobody's rooting for, well, back then at least, nobody's rooting for the guy to take over the world or whatever, right? It's all about John McClane and go. So that was something that I hate drama. I've always been obsessed with the idea of truth. And in those scenarios, the truth was very evident, very obvious, and we can all just jump on board.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, those hero figures, whether it's Superman or it's Indiana Jones, it's almost like they set an ideal or an aim, and they give you a path to strive down to try to create that identity. In a weird way, it's hard to say the word worship, but as a young kid, you almost, that's what you feel. You feel like that is the greatest example of how I could be. Like, I don't know how to be the next Indiana Jones, but I'm going to try. It gives you that thing that pulls you into the future, and you go like, okay, how do I make everything that I do as close to that as possible? Do you remember, it's a feeling too. It's not even just words or thoughts. Like, you have a feeling that you want to aspire to something like that, right? Is that what you felt as a young man?
Yeah, and like, I think we're pack animals by nature, right? And so
we are tribal, for sure.
You have an alpha, and you want to be that alpha, right? And when as a little boy, like, I didn't know all those terms and words, but I just knew Arnold represented what I wanted to be. And I remember there was a time when I was in high school, and my mom walked in the room, and she's putting clothes away and looks up, and every square inch of my room is covered in posters of like shirtless dudes with machine guns. And she's like, don't you want to have, like, I don't know, a girl in a bikini up here or something? Something that no mom has ever asked us on. But that's all I wanted to be, was that guy. And I think it was like twofold for me. I mean, the physique, obviously, but it was the fact that my heroes in the movies always, they were never wavering. They knew what they wanted. They were locked in. They're heat-seeking missiles, and they went after it. And then you get in the real world, and nobody's like that. Everybody's like, well, I kind of want to. Even like guys in sports, they'd be like, I want to be a really good football player. It's like, well, then why don't you work out? It's like, well, that's a lot of work, so I don't really want to. So you don't really want it. And then it was like action movie heroes knew what they wanted. They went after it. Nothing got in their way, and they accomplished it.
Now, do you can't carry that same spirit today? Like, do you look up to the motivational figures like the David Goggins or the people that they're so extreme, the Michael Jordans, the people that, because there are those examples in society, but they are rare. Where
Right.
these people that are all in their endeavors, 100%, like Kobe Bryant. If you ever listen to that guy talk, like, I don't make deals with myself. The deal was already done. I
Right.
said, this is the work I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it regardless. I'm going to show up before everybody else. I'm going to outwork them. They have this unbreakable mindset. Do you still carry that with you today, or it has like the storms of life and the weather that we have to deal with? Has that shifted over time, or is that same aim still there?
What's really funny because until you phrased it that way, I haven't thought about this, but I think the world's beaten me down, and so with Kobe as a good example, and all these other guys that you could name or have named, they were also born with insane levels of talent. So when those guys are like, all you have to do is just not compromise and just get after it, I'm like, right, but you joined the NBA when you were out of high school. So I don't want to hear you tell me I can do anything because I can't. And I think that's where.
What about like a David Goggins? Because
So
like the big part of his story is he was massively overweight, didn't really have any thing together within himself. He lacked discipline terribly.
Right.
But now he is the literal epitome of discipline and resilience. And
Yeah, and I think with like, and I don't know him personally, right? And I don't want to say anything that's gonna be like against him. My only thing is, like, not everybody can be a Navy SEAL. The only thing keeping me from being a Navy SEAL isn't that I don't want it bad enough. Because if that was just the case, then we'd all be astronauts or we'd all be in the NBA. So there is a component of birth in there. And that's the kind of the whole point of the SEALs, right? Is you separate, there's the top 1%, but what's the top 1% of the 1%? And so when guys like that are like, you just don't want it bad enough, I'm like, bullshit. That's not it. So my back's shot. I got said surgeries. I've torn my bicep tendon just like doing shrugs. And so it's like, well, is it just because I didn't want it enough? Or is it, and yeah, you can rehab. That's part of it, right? But it's like, we can't, the real life does get in the way. And to be honest, I don't know where that separation is. I don't. But I mean, you train fighters. Like, it's not like every single person that walks in your gym can be in the UFC. They just can't. But I can never tell somebody like you can't because I just don't know.
sure. And to be honest with you, when I sit down with you, I think you definitely could have been a Navy SEAL if that's really what was set in your heart. If, let's say, you had watched a documentary about Navy SEALs as a young man instead of Indiana Jones, and
Right.
your entire aim said, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I've actually had a Navy SEAL on this podcast, and he
Yeah.
blew me away. He was incredible. But, like, I don't think there's any components from the gentleman that sits across from me today that couldn't have produced a Navy SEAL, because you don't need to be like the guy that was in here was significantly smaller than you physically. Right. He was shorter than you. So I don't. If you're looking for certain defining factors, like, yeah, if I'm 5'1", the chance of me playing in the NBA is non-existent. But like Emmitt Smith was a well-known NFL running back for the Dallas Cowboys, and he was like 5'5", one of the greatest running backs of all time. And most
Right.
people would package that man and say, "Sorry, the cards that you were dealt do not yield an NFL player." And one of the things that you just cited is some of the people that made it to the UFC, or some of the top professional fighters I had. If you would have asked me in the very beginning, like, is that person going to be a professional fighter? It's so hard to say yes.
Right.
Like, as a coach, I try to look at people for the people they could become versus the people they are. But I'll tell you a really quick story. The gentleman that fights next weekend, ESPN, UFC, Josh Parisian, it's his 8th fight in UFC. He's a stud. When he first joined this school, I had another gentleman. His name was Mike Wojo. He had wrestled previously, good-looking guy, crazy good condition. He beat Josh in every single area of the fight game. I mean, he was a better striker, better wrestler, better jiu-jitsu, better looking, smoother with the women.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, across the board.
Yeah, whatever it is, he's got it.
You would be able to say, okay, well, that, like, let's say you put yourself into Josh's shoes. You would say, well, I don't have it because that is it. Look, he's better than me at everything.
Right.
The first time that guy fought his professional MMA debut, and he was real arrogant going into it, which I almost can't blame him. He was the number one prospect almost nationally. He was killing everybody. He fought a dangerous dude in a way that he shouldn't have. Got caught, knocked out. He got knocked out. Never fought again. Josh Parisian, who had won and lost and, had practices where he was on tears on the side of the mat. Like, dude, there's no way I can do this. Like, look at the distance between me and that guy.
Right.
but he had perseverance, he had consistency and discipline, and he just like refused to not show up. He's now the only heavyweight from Michigan to ever get in the UFC after Dan Severn or
Right.
James Toney, if you wanted to count him, which that was that stint. But there was none of the traits that you would look for and say, that's what it takes. So I think a little bit of limiting belief might be in your mind, because when I look at you, if you were sitting with me today and say, yeah, I was a Navy SEAL, I went through this training, I did all these operations, and now I do real estate, that's incredibly believable to me. But I almost hear behind your words that you don't think that was possible.
Well, yeah, but so I would give the story. Oral Hershiser, famous pitcher. The story goes his brother was better than him and blew his arm out. Well, so he couldn't want it more. He couldn't overcome the injury. You can't. There's stuff you cannot do. There's also a reason nobody in the UFC has one arm. There's just not. Now, am I going to say that's impossible? It'll never happen? I'm not going to say that, because I would have said that about pitching, and Jim Abbott did it, right? So
And Nick Newell is actually a professional fighter in Bellator with one arm. He's unbelievable.
Right. But and that's where it's like there is a thing called the truth, and that there's certain things you just can't overcome. It doesn't mean you can't succeed. What it means is you might have to change your target, and that's okay, right? And so I think there's an idea of, like, if someone's like, and I had to talk to psychologists about this because this is kind of how my thinking has been. But if someone's like, I'm a U.S. senator, I'm a failure. How are you a failure? That's a huge, awesome thing. Well, I want to be president, and I've never become president, so I'm a failure, right? That sucks for that person's thinking, and that person needs to change their focus. And you can argue they can still be president or whatever, but there's one, right? And so there is limiting factors. There's, for every Kobe Bryant, there's a million guys that want it just as bad as he did. They just don't have the talent.
What is it about him, though, that's different? Because, like, let's say we just looked at his height. There's a million other people the same height. We just looked at his muscle composition. There's a million people with his body composition. What separates Kobe Bryant?
So I think, and again, I'm not a scientist, so if any scientist listening can feel free to make fun of me, but who's stronger, a chimpanzee or a human being? A chimpanzee. But I'm bigger than a chimpanzee. My arm, I can work out all day. Well, why is it different? Well, there's just physics that are involved, right? There's genetics that are involved. I've met a lot of athletes that their brain just talks way faster. They have way more quick, fast twitch muscle fibers. Guys that who's the strongest bench press guy in the world? Like, some guys, well, yeah, they're born with bigger chests and shorter arms. But even among those guys, there's dudes that you just look at and they can just move weight. Why? They're just born that way. I don't know. Ask God, right? So that's where it's easy for me. If I say everybody can do anything at all times, I can sell a lot of books. If I say, and I firmly believe, this is what I firmly believe. If you believe in your head you can do all things at all times, no matter what, and nobody can tell you no except for you, if you live that way, you will absolutely succeed more than someone that doesn't live that way. What is your ceiling? I don't know. But you will always overcome someone that doesn't live like that. So that's where I can make the compromise, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's self-belief, right? Because what I look at out of the people that make it, and most of the things that are so incredibly difficult, like what we're speaking of, it's their mind that separates them.
Yeah.
They're able to do things differently because of, maybe it is just down to a belief. Maybe on a basic level, you and I might rationalize more like, this is unlikely. And because of the probability of failure, maybe we step to a different course when some of those people are just psychotic in the pursuit of no, I'm going to do this until I am the best, period.
Right.
But I believe that most of the limiting factors come from the mind, if there's not an extreme physical disadvantage like we had spoken of.
Well, and this is where I like this talk, because it's going to kind of kick ahead where I was going to go. But so the perfect example of why I'm why am I not a Navy SEAL? Well, one of the things is I was born with severe breathing problems, and I can't tell you what they are because I've never been diagnosed. So we go to run a mile. I ran every single day in high school, and I could never get better. I just never got better. And I played a bunch of sports. I played rugby. I did all these things. But it was I was going to gas out before anybody else. So if David Goggins comes up to me and says well, why don't you just want it more? I'm going to be like, fuck you. You have any idea how hard it is for me to do half of what you do? You don't. And it's well, I used to be overweight and I used to be unmotivated. It's I don't want to hear it because I'm pissed, right? Now, I was also having a lot of problems in my life after college. I felt like my body just shut down and I couldn't figure it out. And I would go to personal trainers. I would go to wrestling guys and they'd be like, you don't want enough. You don't want enough. You don't want enough. It's in your head, man. And I'm like, dude, I can't get to where I used to be. I can't. Well, I finally talked to someone who would just hear me. and be like, well, maybe it's more complicated than that. And that person found out because I diagnosed 4 to 5 concussions, my pituitary gland had stopped producing testosterone, right? My test was done. I had like none. I also found out like I'm not a converter, so I don't convert testosterone to estrogen. So my estrogen was like bottomed out too. So the second I had someone that just heard me and was like, maybe there is a genetic component here, which is fixable, I finally got the medical help I needed. I finally went on testosterone, and I can tell you it saved my life, right? So now it's like, well, have I opened my options up to what I can accomplish? I still have this breathing problem I got to get to the bottom of, and that could be concussion related too, right? So, but if that's why I think it was like, it's not just a matter of pushing yourself harder. There is other stuff on top of that whatever.
100%. And I think you're absolutely accurate. It's funny you just told that story because Josh had the same thing. He got his testosterone levels looked at once, and it was like shockingly low.
Right.
He's a UFC heavyweight fighter that's a professional athlete for a living, and they didn't correlate it to whether it was from a concussion or whether it was this, but something actually had caused his levels to be extremely low as well. And that is a hormonal imbalance or hormonal difference that is going to express itself through, performance.
Right.
Testosterone is a massive driver towards male performance, towards performance in general. So it's like you had this underlying issue that had it been discovered earlier and been remedied, maybe all of a sudden you are at the exact same or further level, maybe because when you're struggling for something and then you finally get a breakthrough, it's like, oh my God, I get a new chance at this thing. I got a fresh chapter to go from. So I love hearing that you were an athlete as a young man, you were in sports, because they shape us, right? Like being part of a team. Did you have one coach that stood out to you as a young kid that really made an impact on you that you can remember?
Oh, in my personal coaches, yeah, for sure. Roe Camp was a defensive coordinator at Novi High School, where I went to high school. He was the first coach. Like, I have a lot of really good coaches. I still talk to Curdy and stuff. They're amazing people. But he was just like, he got me. I felt he heard me.
People like you and I feel like that were really inspired at some point as an athlete. You remember somebody that gets you.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, they see potential in you. They demand it, the best, but they just know how to operate with you. I remember those experiences from my life, and it brings a better version of you out when you have people like that around you. When you were first about to graduate high school, go to college, what did you think the world was going to have in store for you? Like, did you have a career path laid out yet? Were you just kind of going from experience to experience? Were you expecting to play sports in college as an athlete? Did you, et cetera?
Yeah, this is where like things divert. Where it's I always start this with a story as old as time because it's like the opposite of that. But so for me, I met the woman of my dreams when I was 16. Her name was Erin Quinn. She was way hotter than me, way popular than me. I believe it or not, was not a attractive guy in high school. Super pale. I was already going bald, acne, all the things. Me, but worse, basically. And so she was the first person I'd ever met my age that gave me like unconditional love. Like and anybody that knows my now wife will tell you, there's no subtext with her. She never cared about never cared about anything. It was just like, hey, you make me laugh. I like you. We're in. And that was it. And I know it's a roundabout way to answer your question, but it's the only way to answer it. There was a time my junior year where I was going to go on vacation for a couple of days, and so I went over to say hi, and we were talking. It's like, all right, I got to go, and she started like sobbing, and I was very confused as to why she'd be upset, and she was like, well, because I'm going to miss you, and it sounds very basic to most people, but to me it was not. And I do not have a lot of love for myself, especially back then, and it completely changed the trajectory of my life by having that person. And it's, again, this is not going to, for most people, it's like, so someone missed you. Yes, it was a very, very big moment in my life. So then you fast forward to college, and I went to Michigan State. I played rugby there. It was becoming apparent, again, because I had health problems. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was really talented, really good. I could have went places with rugby, but I couldn't get over these, like, the breathing stuff, some other stuff. I was having nagging injuries and issues. And I was like, all right, well, I always thought I wanted to, since I saw Indiana Jones, I wanted to tell stories for a living, like for sure, no questions asked. But I can't draw, so I'm like not an artist. I couldn't do comic books. Screenwriting is never going to happen, right? So it was like, I guess I'm a writer, and I'm not a journalist. I found out I'm just not. I don't work that way, and I'm not a novelist. So I have no talent. So I was gonna be a cop, and I was like kind of went with like sports and action and fitness and all that thing. So it's kind of still staying on that path a little bit for me. And talking about heroes and all that, I was like, for me, like I want to be that guy. So me and my girlfriend Erin got engaged. I went to law enforcement, became a cop, and then at I'd say about 2 years in, I started writing a blog. So I discovered blogs. So blogs didn't exist I'm aging myself here, but graduated high school in 2000. I was going to graduate college in 2004. Became a cop in 2005. And back then, it was like you couldn't beg for a police job. It wasn't. We went to Kalamazoo. They were hiring one cop, and I showed up, and 300 guys got there. They got through to that part of it. So it was like 1,000 got for one job, and that didn't happen. So I finally got hired at Novi. I was there for about 2 years, and then I discovered blogs, and I was like, I can write that way. That's kind of because blogs are all about, for those of you who aren't writers, you write the way people actually talk, and there's no prose, there's no like diagramming. It's just like I talk this way, you read it this way, done. So I started a blog called officerawesome.com, and it was just like my stories. It doesn't exist anymore, but that was my stories, and it kind of took off. Like it was the first time in my life, people that didn't even like me would read it and be like, "That's really good." And I had a friend whose wife was a librarian, and she was like heavily involved in like editing some writer stuff and everything. And she was like, "Lee, this is like really good." Like she's like, and I'll be honest, like you annoy me, and I don't really like you that much, but this is really good and funny. And I was like, well, if she's in, so then I kind of kept it up, and then in it would have been '08, they were starting to lay off people at the department. Economy had taken a dump. Things were getting bad, and I was kind of probably like next in the list. And I was looking it up, and there's a film school in Michigan, and it's a 1-year program. And in law enforcement, if you quit, you can keep your certification for a year. And I was like, and I would get like a little bit of a payout, and so it could kind of cover it. And I would talk to my wife, and she was very supportive. And it was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. So I quit before I got laid off. I went to film school, and day one of film school, they had scripts, like actual screenplays, and I read it, and I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. Like I've never had a clarity moment ever. And I can back up and tell you a story how I got there, but I was like, this is me. This is it. And so your whole program at the school it's MPI, Motion Picture Institute of Michigan, is at the end of the year you have like a thesis, and you can write your own movie and film it if you want. You can work on someone else's project. So I had an idea, I wrote it, filmed it, casted it, and won a bunch of like film school awards, which whatever, cool, yay, my audience awards, all that. So it's a short film. I took that movie and I wrote it into a feature, moved to LA because I was like, what LA needs is more people trying to be writers, right? It's like, throw a rock, you get 8 of them and they all suck. So I move out there, and I was there for about a year. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody read anything I wrote. Nobody wanted anything to do with me. And then the girl that was in my movie became Miss Michigan. So random, I didn't even know she was like a model or anything. Very good looking girl, but I had no idea. Then she became Miss USA, and it turns out that she was the first Arabic Miss USA, and which was a big deal. And then on top of that, she had done some, which I will tell her, I'll defend her. I'll call it complete bullshit. People cared, but she had done like a strip tease thing for like a local radio station. No nudity, nothing. But because she was Arabic, because she was Miss USA, it blew up, and everyone was like, too raunchy for TV and for your, whatever, all that stuff, right? Well, then it came up, she did my movie. And my movie was like it was an R-rated comedy, again, no nudity, whatever, but it's like ridiculous. And there's a bunch of like probably wiener jokes in there I haven't seen in a while. So it came up. And so at the time Trump ran Miss USA, he still might, but so like they had to review the movie. It got some publicity. I got made fun of on the Talk Soup. So my buddies are in Vegas, they're all hammered, and they're like, is Lee on TV? And it was like, oh my, so yeah, it was. So like this is, you're aging myself again, but this is back when Granholm was in office. So we had all these film incentives. And so there's a studio that got built in Michigan, and they're in the process of it. And, you want to call it God, you want to call it, universe, or just whatever timing. And it's my dad was in heating and air conditioning, and he was talking to one of his buddies, and his buddy was like, hey, he's like, how's your son doing? And he was like, he's still in law enforcement. He's like, oh no, he's in LA now trying to be a writer, and it's not going well, and blah blah. And the guy's like, well, I have some tenants moving in one of my buildings in Livonia. They're building a movie studio, and they need air conditioning. So why don't you come out, talk to them, whatever. And my dad tells me this, something like, Dad, the air conditioning guy is not going to give a script to a movie studio and get your son. So he's like, well, that's funny because they did. I was like, what? And they read the script. They loved it. Called me up. They're like, we saw the press on the script. Yeah. And they're like, do you want to move back to Michigan and work in-house as our screenwriting person? And I was like, so I'm like the only person I've ever heard of that moved to LA to get hired in Michigan for screenwriting, but all in. So I come back, and it was one of those things where it was 10 years after, ironically, it was 10 years after high school. So I'm working in a movie studio, and it's my 10-year reunion. And I'm like, I can't tell anybody this because no one's going to believe me. Talk about a made-up story for a high school reunion, right? Where do you work? Oh, I'm a movie writer. It's like, well, what have we seen? Nothing. Well, where's it at? It's in Livonia, which I know it's on 96. But it was real. It was all real. So we couldn't really tell anybody, whatever. But I was pumped. I was excited. It was like for the first time in my life, and talking about like taking shots at like something that you never think is going to happen, right? But I was like, and this is all leading back into what like we are talking about, where like I didn't take no for an answer. I quit my job. Like we were so freaking poor in LA. There was a moment where I literally could buy food or toilet paper. And I bought like literally the only thing, and when I say food, it was hot dogs that you had, pack of hot dogs. I couldn't even afford the buns, but we could eat them. And my wife was there for all, she was like, she never complained. She was just like, yep, I got you. Yep, it's fine. She was working the whole time. She worked to even make it worse, it's like she worked for nonprofits. So she worked for cystic fibrosis. She worked for, it was just Lou Gehrig's disease. Cystic fibrosis, ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, and then eventually wound up at Make-A-Wish in LA. So it's Make-A-Wish International. So but before all this, we're back in Michigan, and it's one of those things where right when I was like, I did it. Like every person, I lost a lot of friends when I went to LA because they were like, if you're going to try to be a writer, good luck. I lost a lot of there's family members who they'd stop talking to me and made sure to shit on me whenever they could, like the whole thing. And it's the difference with what people never understand that aren't creative is like, if I tell someone like, I'm trying to be a pro fighter, you're always going to have someone roll their eyes at you, right? But every time they see you, you're going to be in shape. Everything you're doing is like helping your body, your mind, your path. With writing, it's not that way. If anything, I'm getting fatter because I'm like locked in my, and it's a lot of work. Writing's, I'm not saying it's easier or harder than anything else. It's a lot. So you're eating bad, even if you, it's a lot. And unless you like sell it. So I work on a screenplay for 3 months and you're like, this sucks. I don't want it. I can shop it around. People aren't going to want it, right? It's not like, well, yeah, but I learned some striking I didn't know before. There's no like correlation. So anyway, right when I was getting like, I did it, we're cool, I've justified everything, Snyder got elected and killed the tax incentive in Michigan, and the studio went out of business. And it was like 0% commentary on politics. I don't care. He told us he was going to keep the incentive. He got, like the day he got in office, he's like, it's over. He like couldn't say it fast enough. And we were just like, no. So it's over. Luckily for me, the last project I was working on was a movie called Sins of South Beach, and it was based on a memoir of the old mayor of South Beach when the Mariel boat lift happened in Miami and things were really bad. And the director of that just really liked me, liked my style and stuff. He's like, I'll tell you what. He's like, I'm going to do a short film. You can write it for me, and we'll film it in L.A., and then you can come back. Because, I literally sold everything I had to go back to Michigan. Now I got to go back to L.A. My wife's got to get another job. We've only been there for a year. Whole thing. Family's like, you're going back out? You have a job lined up? Nope. So he brings me out, and the first day of filming, I meet the lead actor. Guy's named Matt Cohen, and he was on the show Supernatural at the time. He was like a bit player on the show. And we were the only 2 guys on set that were married. And he was like freshly married. So we kind of hit it off because it's like everybody's like, afterward partying and stuff. And we're like old and, lame and whatever. So we just kind of became friends. And Matt, making a long story short, went on to, he had a lot of hard times between that and then his next gig. I had a lot of hard times between that. And I'm on fire, right? I'm at a studio, whatever, get a short film, and then it's nothing for about, I don't know, 4 years. Matt can't get a job. I can't get a job. And again, we're back in the, like, my wife's working nonstop. I'm cleaning boxing gyms. I mean, like, every crappy job you can think of in LA, I did. I wasn't pretty enough for, OnlyFans or anything, which didn't exist, I guess, back then. But it was bad. I did nothing, man. And so you're still writing every day, but no one's buying it. And nobody cares about, like, I used to work at a studio. They're like, yeah, who didn't? All right, anyway. So it was brutal. It got really bad. And my wife's whole thing was the only thing my wife has ever asked me for in her entire life. And she was upfront about this from the day we met. She was like, I want to have kids. That's my thing. And if you like, I love you, but if you won't have kids, I won't marry you. Fair. So now I'm 32, and we're doing, like, I was on a small project, so I was paying the bills, but that's about all I was doing. And became very evident we had to do in vitro fertilization, and so we do in vitro. Luckily, we got pregnant, but it was like, that's all the money. And, again, like, if you're making $100,000 a year in LA, you're broke. Like, there's not, our apartment's $2,500 a month, and it's like, it was nice, but nothing you'd pay that for, right? And so it was just, we had to go home and we'll go back to Michigan. And it was one of those things where I have learned that the path to anything isn't this straight line you think it's going to be. It is this up and down, but you want the trajectory, even if it's up and down, it's like going in the same direction, right? And this was not. This is 100% back to zero, back to start. But it is what it is. And so we went back home, and what I tell people is, like, I had a 4-year degree from Michigan State. I was a cop. I was writing movies. I worked at a studio. I mean, I could prove all this stuff. And when I came back, I couldn't get a job anywhere because it's like, well, okay, you have experience, but not what we're doing. And the only job I could get that has no barrier to entry is real estate. And I have a friend who worked at a real estate team, and she was like, I can get you in. I don't know if you like it. It's sink or swim. And I was like, well, I'm already sinking, so it is what it is, right? So we had to move in with my in-laws, who, thanks to them, they let us in. We had a baby. I'm 33. And I was like, the only thing that really it did for me where I started, you can't just do real estate. You have to be like an in-house sales guy. And so I was working with a guy great guy, just got out of, he just had some dust up with the cops. So he'd been arrested a couple of times. The other guy next to me was clearly on drugs. He had a pill problem. And I was like, you want to talk about a failure, like, in your head? That was me. Like, you couldn't possibly draw up a worse scenario for me. And I was in a city I didn't want to live in a place I didn't want to be, in a scenario I didn't want to, like, nothing. And it's like, and when you're again, like, I want to be a fighter. It's like, you can watch me train. You can watch me, like, my stuff on TV or even come to a local thing. When you want to be a writer, nobody knows if you're any good. Nobody knows if you're full of crap. Nobody, like, it's hard. And so they're like, well, I don't know if Lee's any good, but I see where he's at. It's not a good spot. So that's where I was, right? But my wife never wavered. She was just like, you're going to do it. I have faith in you. Right now it sucks, but I have faith in you. And a lot of guys would have been like, I'm out, right? For sure, girls. And my wife was like, no, I'm all set. So for me, I was like, well, I have two options, right? Like, everybody that's kind of doubted me up until this point, I can prove them right or I can prove them wrong. My wife's the only one that believes in me. Should I prove her right or wrong? I want to prove her right. So I spent the next 3 years just absolutely killing whatever I could, filling up any lead, doing whatever I could do. And I got to a point when real estate took off. It took 2.5 years, but it finally took off. And I got fairly successful. We were able to get our own house. And, ever since then, it was like upward trajectory. Because I learned really early on, like, real estate, you're not selling a product, you're selling you. And that's what writing is. It was the same thing. Like, you can hire any asshole to write the script, but I'm better than those guys, so hire me, right? And so that's what I did, and it took off. And then at some point, I'd say like 4 years in, I was hitting this wall, and my buddy Matt Cohen from that movie, who was on Supernatural, had gone to, and we'd stayed in touch, but he'd gone on to a couple bit parts here and there, and then he took a job on General Hospital, so he's on the show, and he still did some stuff with Supernatural, and he calls me up. He's like, Lee, I have an opportunity. I want to be a director while I act, because director, if you're directing, then you can control the narrative, right? You can bring projects in instead of hoping someone brings you in. But I need a short film. The only thing you need a short film that was great enough to get into certain festivals, like high-ranking festivals. And I'm like, all right, well, I got an idea. I'm like, I wasn't really thinking about it for short, but and it's called Mama Bear. We wrote it. It blew up. It was so popular that he got hired to direct an episode of Supernatural. It was one of the last episodes ever before the show ended, and we were able to cast his wife in it, who's an actress, and from there, like, that got me new management. It got me other stuff, and it's still this fight, but it's like, it's resulted in 2 or 3, 4 projects since then, and so that's kind of like my, not the quick story in the world, but it's like there's no way to shorthand that, right? And so real estate's still going. So in Michigan, I have we do a lot up here, and we do about 2 movies a year. So
I got so much that I have to ask you about. And I went through, I think, every emotion while you were telling me that story. You live a fascinating life, and that's like, life is meant to be something full of experience. Life is not meant to be this dull, just monotonous trudge through the, each day to find out when you can finally be happy. Although you have had, it sounds like, a lot of ups, you've had a lot of downs. That is life, and that is what life is meant to be. So one of the things I got to shout out is, like, where did you find this wife that during those moments, because I'm trying to picture that, those moments in LA, the moments where you had to close that chapter, where you had to come back and you were like, guess I'm going to do real estate, like, all this time. And, like, you described that moment you found writing and you went to that school as, like, that was the spark, man. That was the young kid again that saw Indiana Jones. You were like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do.
Right.
When you had to close that chapter, how in the world, like, did you slip into depression? What was life like? Like, how did you and your wife keep that bond during those periods? Because I'm picturing when your flame goes out in your heart, because that's what it is. You're describing a flame, right? If your flame goes out in your heart and now you're like, I guess I'm just going to have to do what I have to do to get by, and we're going to go back home in a city I don't want to be in. I got to know a little bit more, like, how did you persevere in that time? Where was the strength within yourself that you found, or, like, how was your wife just, like, you even cited it. You said most women would have been like, hey, sorry, you've tried your best. I need someone that can provide these things. Divorce rate is like, what, 60-some%?
Yeah. Wow.
And yet she was like, no, like, we are in this together, and we're going to. Just tell me a little bit more about that period, the things you found for people, maybe messages you have for people that are struggling. Because there's no way you even saw the light at the end of the tunnel at that point. No. You didn't see the connections that you had made would just come back around. Tell me a little bit more about that. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, and that's where I've struggled with depression a lot. I've struggled a lot with, and this is a period of my life where before I knew my test was low, so that's also part of it. The only thing I could, so the flame went out. I was depressed. I was sad, and I wasn't even, like, angry. I was just bummed. And when you're creative too, it's like, it's really hard to explain to people that haven't been there, because everybody praises children for being creative and, like, oh, you colored outside the lines, or, oh, you made the octopus purple. That's cool because there's no rules, right? And then it's like, oh, you're 40, and it's like, oh, you're playing in a cover band on that's adorable, but what do you really do? And that's the message you always get as a creative, is like, that's cool, we respect that, or whatever. We don't get it, but we don't. But what do you really do? And so it's like, it sucks, and it's like, it's really hard. And then when you get to that age where I was at, that position, and I was like, I should have listened to everybody. Every single person who told me this was a dumb path was right. And so, yeah, it's out. like you watch every person you went to high school with. They're not, at 33, they're on their like first promotion. They're starting to like level up. They're starting to get their real house. You're living in a guest room. It was brutal. And Erin stayed, and she didn't stay. She was like content. And that was I blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. And even like people are being like, no, so you're putting on this. No, she's just happy. Part of it, we're doing, like, for me, it was like, whenever I thought about giving up, it was about her and my daughter, my infant daughter, and it was like I just can't. Like they're here. Like I put them through this. I have to get them out of this. That was like really the thing to focus on. In sales, we call it the why. Why are you doing this? But that was it. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. I'm gonna live at the office and I'm just gonna grind. And then what happened to me was I had stopped watching any movies. Like, I'm not gonna see anything. I'm not gonna watch trailers. I'm not gonna talk about movies or writing because it's just too sad. And then I got to this point where I was finally, like, I'd put that chapter behind me. I was finally feeling okay. We had a contest at work about, like, how many listings can you get, how many new clients. And my team won in large part because of what I did. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this was my calling after all. Maybe I did it. And right when I went off on my own, I blew my Achilles out playing backyard, no hand touch football. And I overnight couldn't go to people's houses. Overnight. And we just bought our own place because I was doing well, right? And it was like I had to I had to get carried home. And it's like, not only is this blown, but the surgery. And it's a 6-month rehab. And we have no money. And I tried, like, you're on the little knee thing or you get a scooter. And I'd go to people's houses and they're like, yeah, check upstairs. It's really nice. I'm like, I can't get up there. And they were like, oh, and lost that listing. So, dude, every time it was like, and this is what I would tell people to do is, it's okay to be bummed. I can't control that. You can Xanax it or whatever, but you're still bummed. It doesn't matter. But what you can control is, like, what am I going to do about it? But that's the perfect, like, I promise you, if you go through something bad, if you get shit on, there will be obstacles and it's going to get way worse before it gets better. And you just got to keep going forward because that's what I did. And then after the Achilles thing, it got way freaking worse and then it got better. And it was like, then it was all right. Because what it did for me was say, you can't get cocky because, like, but this wasn't a car accident where I was paralyzed or I couldn't get out of bed for a year. It was like, no, 6 months, I'm back. All right, so we're back. And I could cold call and I could do stuff. And the whole time my wife's there, and she never was like, now you're hurt. Right? She was just like, all right, let's go. So, yeah.
Man, this woman is just steadfast. This huge shout out. But it's like, it's incredible that the one thing that I think you don't understand until you've gone through things like you're describing is you do come out stronger on the other side. You just can't wallow in the sadness of the experience for too long. You just have to accept that it is what it is, and you're going to move forward. And the light might not even be visible at the end of the tunnel, but if you keep walking, eventually you're going to step back into the light.
Right.
It's like multiple parts of your story remind me of that Steve Jobs quote, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. You just have to trust that, like, somehow these dots are going to line up and put you in a situation that's successful. And the number one thing I hear through your story, which is, in my opinion, the number one trait of successful people, is just perseverance. You just keep going. During any of these points, you could have self-imploded and been like, I'm a failure, this didn't work out, I'm done. And if you would have fully quit on yourself, then maybe everyone in your life would have no choice but to quit on you too. But each time, there's been something in you that has got you to step back forward, go for it again, and then you've rebuilt every time you've got knocked down. And then when that phone call came from that gentleman saying, hey, I want to be a director, I want you to write this for me, because you know what that is? That's somebody acknowledging what they saw in you.
Yeah.
And that's huge. What was that moment like? Were you almost a little afraid to get back into it? Because I heard a lot of disappointment and failure on that road. And a lot of the times when people distance themselves from things, like you're like, I wasn't even watching movies.
Right.
It's because you don't want to endure the pain of seeing this thing and go, that could have been me. You just want to be like, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, it's
He calls you. Why do you take that chance?
I think for me it was enough time had gone by where I do firmly believe this too. So by that time, I had two kids, and we. So the other part of it was, I get back from the Achilles, I'm working, and the one thing we knew we couldn't do was have kids without in vitro help. And my wife comes in and she's like, "I'm pregnant." And I was like, "What?" And it was like, turns out a lot of times we had no medical diagnosis for why we didn't have kids. It just wasn't happening. Well, it turns out a lot of times when you do in vitro one time, it primes the pump a little bit, and then you can get pregnant naturally. So, and that must have been the non-scientific way to say it. That's what probably happened. But because my wife had shifted from Make-A-Wish International and Make-A-Wish Michigan, we had no covered, pregnancy leave or whatever. We missed it by like 2 weeks. So we're like, all right, back to square one, right? So then, all this going on, but I think enough time had gone past. I think I had killed that part of me off, or tried to kill it off long enough, that when the phone call came through, I was ready. I mean, it's the only way I can say. I was just kind of ready. And I had accomplished what I needed to do to get there. And when I sat down to write that script, because I had the idea, but I didn't have the script, and I wrote it in like literally a weekend. It's a short, but it's still fairly impressive. And this is it. This is the story I want, for sure. This is how I want to tell it. And I sent it out to my buddy Matt, and he was like, "This is awesome." He's like, "This is it." He's like, "This is way cooler than I even thought it was going to be." And it was almost like when you punch somebody and you don't even feel it, or you hit the ball, you don't even feel it. It's just that perfect, like, that was it. It was connected. Everything was right. That was that movie. But for me, it was like the perfect timing, which I never have, but that time I did. So.
And it's almost like you had shown yourself that you can make it in other avenues too, which in a
Right.
weird way is a liberating feeling. It's not like you were complete sink or swim anymore. Like in a
Right.
state of desperation, you're like, "Hey man, I can make it like that. But I could also put together a script. You know what? I mean, this is what I wanted to do for a while." And it's crazy that it blew up the first time that takes place. Mama Bear goes nuts.
Yeah.
You get some attention again. You get validation for all those years that you were overlooked. Like, I can't imagine what it's like trying to live in LA, because that's where everybody goes to try to chase that same dream. And you're just in a massive competition. And it's
Right.
probably favoritism and who knows who and yada, yada, or what you're willing to do, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
We don't have to go further into that. But I'm sure you have a million stories
yeah.
from LA. But one of the things that I found out when you were coming onto this podcast was that now, you're a successful man, you have multiple things going, you're doing well in real estate, you've done well in film, you have all these different avenues going, you got a family, you guys got rocked by a medical diagnosis, an illness, and it's like, for anyone that's listened to the story to this point, it's your wife has been the rock solid, steadfast supporter, love, the unconditional love from that 16-year-old man that said, "This person's going to miss me? Like, what
Right.
about me is worthy of that?" And you're now fighting with that battle. If you want to go into
Yeah.
it, you're more than welcome to.
Well, and so, like, I think going back to earlier stuff too, like I'm doing okay right now, and things like got to the point where, I got my manager. We were sending stuff out there. We had Mama Bear actually had Don Johnson signed on, which is a kind of a hero of mine growing up. And it kind of fell through, but it was like we talked to Mel Gibson for 6 months last year, his company. So like things were like we're trending in the right direction, to use the millennial talk. But right when things were like kind of peaking, my wife, so we just had another kid through in vitro. And
what timeline is this, by the way?
so this is like 2 years ago. So about 2 years ago, we had our son. 3 years ago, the son. But when this happened, my wife was stopped breastfeeding, and the like swelling in the milk just like wasn't going away, and it's called mastosis. It's not really alarming. It happens. Apparently, it happens all the time. And so we'd gone on my wife told the doctor, and they were like, "Yep, here's some antibiotics. Not a big deal." So we went on a trip with some friends. And it just kind of got worse, and that was weird because the antibiotics cleared up right away. That's kind of odd. So she was like, checking it. There's no lumps or anything, so no big deal. And then she calls her or whatever, the lady doctor, boob doctor, whatever they're called, and she was like, "Yeah, you should come in." Okay, so she comes in, and it was like on a Friday, and comes home, and it's like it's not good news. And it was like what they thought it was is they did a mammogram, and there was calcifications in there, and they're like, which I've never heard, but it's basically like that could be what's plugging all the ducts up, and that could be pre-cancer, cancer, or just something we have to keep an eye on, but it's not like nothing. So my wife's pretty upset, but I was like, well, look, like, I mean, you're 39. Like, I guess technically it could be breast cancer. I don't know anything, but I'm like, I'm not too worried. People have breast cancer all the time. So Monday rolls around, whatever, we get the results back. It's definitely cancer, and it's a super rare form of breast cancer, and it's called inflammatory breast cancer. And there's like 5% of the population has it. That's it. And so, like, our oncologists at Providence were like, we don't really deal with this too much, but what we can tell you is you got to get in now. And so it's like, on one hand, what's great about it is you hear all these stories about people who have cancer, and they're like, yeah, it took me like 6 months to get into this. No, it took us like a day. And it was like, the quickest we can get you on the chemo is 2 weeks, because you have to get a port put in and whatever. You're going to get it in 2 weeks. So, what? And it was like, again, this woman that was the only through line of my entire life, like the only part. She was sick, and it wasn't great odds, but it wasn't like there's a real chance we could beat this thing, and because we caught it pretty good. But even whenever, like, I have tons of people that were like, well, my dad's a doctor, this guy is a doctor, they specialize in this, and anytime you tell them what it was, they were like, oh, like their whole demeanor changes, and I knew, and so, making a long story short, that kicked off a 2-year journey. And we had to go to Houston because MD Anderson, which, shout out to them, they're an awesome hospital. They're like our doctors were like, look, we might deal with inflammatory cancer like 1 to 2 times a year. They deal with it twice a week. So that's the place to go. And we're like, all right. And so we went there, had a team. The team was really great, but there was a lot of scares, a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And after radiation and chemo and all that type of stuff, this is a year and a half. We, they call us in and it's like, look, we don't use the term remission anymore, apparently. They don't say it's like gone or whatever, but they're like, we're getting your port out. All your scans are clear is how they would phrase it. So it's like, it's not in your body anymore that we can find. So we're going to have this big like party, where it was like kind of the 1 year-ish mark. And we were going to have a celebration about being in remission. And then my wife called me and she was like, so she started having so she had like a twitch in her face, kind of this whole time. And we'd gotten it checked out multiple times. And the doctors were like, this is a symptom of something bad, but like we cleared it. It's not, because like we did MRIs, we did everything. It's fine. Okay. Well, then after this, like the only thing that got worse was this twitch got really bad. And it was annoying for my wife. It was just like you're trying to talk and your face is kind of flooded. It's, it had spread. It was like kind of her eye for a while, and it kind of spread down her face. So she's like, yeah, they're going to give me like a follow-up MRI because it shouldn't be this progressed, whatever. And that's when the doctors called and they were like, it's in your brain now. It jumped. We don't know where it was or why, but it's terminal, and part of it is apparently once it jumps to there, they classify it as terminal. So there's no like stage anything. It's just, that's it. There's treatments you can do, and we're down that road. But they don't have a way to like cure it, is how they phrase it. Right. So, for me, it's like that. The one thing I will tell you, so I'm not a glasses half full or look at the silver line. I've never really been that guy. I'm just like, what's the truth? And that's what it is. But one thing I will absolutely tell you is growing up with all these mysterious illnesses and problems I've had my whole life, like I've been in the hospital system since I was like 5. And there's a bunch of other crap that goes along health-wise that goes along with all those things. So when a doctor tells me something, I know what they're saying. Whereas my wife's never been sick. So when the doctor will tell her the same thing, she's like, isn't that great? I'm like, it's not great. This is what he said. It's like, well, no. So I can interpret that. I can tell you, whatever. And it's through this journey I can finally be a support to her where she's been a support to me my whole life. Not how I'd want that to go, but like, again, like getting like little bits of like, oh, at least that worked out in there. It's good. So that's where we're at. It's been about 5 months. And we're still figuring it out. But you know, yeah, that's the part of the story where I'm like, I'm not sure what to do with it. You know,
How do you even hear the words like your wife has, a terminal cancer and not just have that shatter the entire world again? Because like you guys have built through all your struggles, through all the ups, through all the downs, through all the moves, through the family, you've gotten back to the point where like you deserve happiness now.
right,
You deserve to be able to live the story where it's like we get to just we did it, honey, like we made it through, like now's the time for us.
right.
After all this fucking struggle, we did it. I can't even imagine how you sit there and like, is it just you just almost have to put up an ice wall and it's like, okay, this is the problem that it is, and we just move forward, and that's the only way you can manage something like that? Or what is that like? Like, I don't even know how you can sit here today and be able to be a functional man knowing this is like the problem that you're fighting in your life, or like, because why get up? Why move forward? I mean, you have your
Yeah,
children,
right.
obviously, but like, how does it something like that hit you?
Yeah, and the kids are the short answer. And there's a minute, like a moment where like that flicker you can't control, like goes through your head where I was super resentful of having the kids because I can't work on me. It's really hard to work on me when you have three kids under 7. But the immediate, like, that's the whatever id, and then the part of me that like can control it. The lizard brain shoots that out, and then you come over top of it. Where I was like, if I didn't have kids, I can't say if I would be alive or I'd continue for or fight or anything, right? And so the kids are just like my daughter did the first time. They're now like forcing me and saving me to be like the person I need to be right now. And my wife too, but it's like if she naps, I could take a nap and I could lay there and drink or I could do whatever. But when the kids are there, I can't. I'm not. More importantly, I'm not. So, but yeah, when it goes through your head, it's like for me, what it was is like I've never been caught up in the it's unfair. Like that never entered my mind ever because like my wife's so awesome and so much prettier than me that if I hadn't met her when I did, she would have been married to like any other guy. Like another guy would have came and scooped her up. The fact that nobody did in high school is like shame on those guys. They're dumb. But it's like so I met her the exact moment, the exact time, and I never like yelled at God or the universe and was like, well, it's so unfair you let me meet this awesome girl and I got way more time with her than anybody else. So I'm not going to let myself do that because that's BS. It's just more like, what do you do? Like, what do you do now? What do you do in the future? Like, how do you, what do you, like, yeah, you're constantly, like, as a guy that wants to, like, have targets and hit those targets, right? It's like, there's no target. It's just keep slinging arrows. It's like, well, for what? Yeah, I don't know. And so what I default to is, like, work. Like, a lot of times it's like, what I can control to an extent. I can't control the sickness. I can't control the treatment. I can't control the health, but what I can control a little bit is the financial aspect. So that's kind of what I've looked at, um, and that's okay. Part of me is like that's okay because we do got to pay for this stuff, right? And it's not easy, and we got a lot of hard decisions to make every day, and that's not easy either. But I've just kind of tried to focus on stuff that I control. You can control, then leave the rest up to whatever, you know.
I mean, and what else really can you do? As you were saying that answer, I could relate to you just as a man. As like that's where my mind would be. It's like, well, what can I do other than being just a broken mess? That,
Right.
like you said, I've never bought into that. This isn't fair. I just don't deal in that. I think anyone
Right.
that's just a seeker of truth, we refuse to look at things that way. But it's like, for all intents and purposes, like, what the hell, man? Like, what the hell? Look at all the trials and tribulations I've gone through. It's almost so hard to not say, like, why me? What the fuck?
Right.
Why should this happen? But you're focused on, like, what can I do to move the family forward, to be there still for my children? Like, you got 3 young kids that are going to grow up and embrace this world and, like, pull from the lead that their father sets forth. You know what I mean? And there's still a lot, in moments like this, I'm sure that the light at the end of the tunnel is, again, not very bright. But what can you do? You can keep walking. You can keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving. When you look to the future, let's say at least from a working standpoint, like, do you really hope that you keep conquering the real estate world and you keep growing there, or do you see yourself maybe now that you've had a little progress with the Mama Bear and these scripts, like, do you think maybe that almost comes back into the equation and you can live from the heart and let your kids see
Right.
that? Like, what do you see going to the future?
Well, and that's like it's the crux of the struggle, right? Because this is always me asking people, what's hard about right in sports, it's like there's every athlete has a day where they're just too old, whatever day that is, and you can push it and fight it, whatever. But there's every athlete's retired at some point, and you can't keep fighting that fight. It's just over, and you can do other things, and it's not. I don't think that's failure, right? It's just inevitable. With writing, with creativity, there's no moment. So the odds are always going to be that I'll never get another movie. If you just play the odds, but the odds were I never get one in the first place, right? So you don't play the odds. So yeah, like the writing is the passion. The writing's like what I believe I was put on this earth for. But you're always going to be dependent on somebody to bring the money. And so I don't have $20 million. So I got to put yourself out there and hope someone pays for it. And it's a tough spot because I'm like, I don't know what to tell I don't know what to tell anybody, even myself, about that. It's like, okay, well, if it takes another 10 years to get a movie made and I made minimum wage from now until then, I would probably make more money than the amount of money I'll make if that hits. But does that success or failure? I don't know. Well, at what point is it success or failure? What if my kids can't have clothes on their shoes? Like, because that's the real argument inside every single day. And then you throw on top of that, health issues, and it's like, I desperately want my kids to know to fight. I also, at what point is it an addiction and not a fight? And I don't have that answer. And that's why when it comes to the earlier stuff we were talking about, there's times where it's just not going to happen. And I think, and I'm not saying this for my movies, but I'm saying in general, where like what you're fighting for would be better served just to pivot 10 degrees and then go that way with it, right? And so I don't know. I don't know.
And like you said, to hardline something like that is impossible.
Yeah.
Because throughout history, there's so many examples of people that, like, failed their way to success. They were failures. Right. And then at 45 or 50 had a breakthrough and they became icons. That's happened. And it's regardless of whether you're going to be an icon, it can work out. Mm-hmm. So then it's always like, it would almost feel better if there was a clear black and white.
Absolutely.
And you'd say, hey, if you hit this date and time and it didn't work, then it won't work.
Right.
You can rest your head on that and say, hey, I fought until that date and time. But that unknown, it's like, I almost don't want you to give up having heard your story because the young kid that watched Indiana Jones, the guy that left the police, force for a year to, I'm going to go to school. This is what I want to do. To going back and forth from LA to you're going to do some HVAC for a movie studio, this work, to the one connection from a woman you casted and a man you were alongside opened these huge doors. You couldn't foresee any of those things happening until they did, until you witnessed that Indiana Jones film, until you went to that school, until you casted that woman, until you met this man. You couldn't lay any of those things out. Maybe you are only one experience away from like, oh my God, until this took place, I wouldn't even ever believe that I really was going to get to this level. So it's like, if you're doing what you can do in the meantime and you're working real estate and your family is happy and they're provided for at least in their basic needs, maybe it's more important for your kids to look at a man in their father who had a passion, who was willing to try to be something that he believed would leave a legacy, leave a story, make a difference, kept that flame in his chest. Maybe it's more important to be that man because there's a lot of dead flames going around in the world, people with no real ambition, no, drive to go forward, that are shells of the people that they could be if they were chasing something they believed in. Maybe you got to realize that like you are casting a much bigger presence by trying to be something great than by saying, hey, it's not it for me. You know what I mean? Because one day you're going to tell your children, you're going to have to find that line for yourself.
Right.
you're going to have to see when is it too much or when it's not enough. But I guarantee you, if one of your little girls, or I don't know if you have a boy, do you have
Yeah, two girls and a boy.
two girls or a boy?
Yeah.
One of them comes to you with a dream and they want something with all their heart, like you're going to want them to pursue it because you'll remember that feeling. But then there will be the father quality in you that'll say, yeah,
Right,
but you got
right.
to, you know what I mean? So you're discovering it as you go. And man, having heard your story today, I genuinely hope that you do not give up that part of yourself, because if you make it there, that's the story.
Right.
That's the story that you go back and you tell your children, or others look at you, or your family is like, can you believe that Lee persevered after all of those things and broke through and became what he wanted to be?
Right.
That's the magic. And who knows if we'll ever achieve that, but in my opinion, it's worth fighting for.
Right. And that's like, so the advice, because I would like to at least give some advice, and I don't know if it's the same for what you do, but the, what I really mean this with all my heart when it comes to creativity. If someone, because I've had someone, if you want to paint in your own time and that's therapeutic for you, or you want to just write short stories and put them on the web, and I'm never going to make fun of that, because that's what you want to do, and that's what you got to get out of your body. Do it. There's no reason not to do that. But when kids come up to me and they're like, Lee, I want to be a screenwriter, and here's why, and they give me all their reasons, and then if they say, that's why I want to be a writer, or I go, that thing, whatever the next thing is. So if you're like, or be a fireman, because I really be the fireman, for sure. The time where you need to be a writer is if you're like, this is what I'm going to do. Are you on board or not? Because if you're not, I'll go to the next guy. Then, all right, well, let's just talk. Because I can give you all the, like, it's going to be hard. Yeah, I already committed to it. Okay. There's going to be disappointment. Yeah, I'm already committed to it. Okay. Like, so those are the people I see succeed. It's the guy who thinks, like, well, I'm going to sell one movie and then I made it, right? It's like, you start from scratch, dude. Oh, but you're still going to go? Then still go. So.
What you just said was so accurate, because if you would have met me when I was a young teen saying that I was going to build this place, I was going to have the largest mixed martial arts facility in Michigan, I was going to turn pro. I was telling people I was going to fight in Brazil when I was an amateur. I was like, one day you'll see I'm going to represent the United States down in Brazil. I was saying the most outlandish shit. When I look back, I was delusionally confident because it was my only path.
Right.
This was me. I only looked through a straight tunnel to what I was going to do, and I did not care what voices were going to tell me anything else. That was the path. That's what's going to happen. It was, if I could take what I knew now and went back, it is so unlikely
Right.
that you're right. If you almost have this, like, I'm going to do this or I could do that, and your conviction is not 1,000%, you're going to get run over by the person that's like, no, live, breathe, no matter what, this is my path. You know, and it's like, that can only come from the heart or your spirit or the universe, whatever you want to call that thing, right? Like, you got to have just a calling. You know what it feels like to have a calling. And, like, life is just, it's brutal, man. And, like, nobody's going to give you a hand up in most cases. Like, you're just going to have to be like, this is what I'm doing. And if you're on board, let's go. And if not, step aside.
Well, because, like, everybody wears the, like, burn the ships shirt. And it's like, all right, well, let's go there. Like, if you burn the ships, like, not everybody comes back. Like,
you starve to death now.
You're going to die. But if you're like, I'd rather, and you have to mean this, because everyone says this, but they don't really mean it. But it's like, I would rather starve to death on the island than come back home. Okay.
Then do it.
Then do it.
Then burn the ship.
But if you're not there, which is healthier not to be there. But if you're not there, then don't don't even take the voyage. Because I can tell you for sure where it ends up then. And that's where, like, great. So,
how do you think someone evaluates if they have that type of conviction or not? Because it's like a lot of people believe they do, but how do they evaluate that, Lee?
I think it's like part of it is I think you're just born that way, but I do think, and then life kind of like tweaks the person that's born that way. But I think, like, so I did stand up for a long time, and it sucks. What sucks about stand up is you start out at open mics. And because I was trying to figure out before I knew how writing was the thing, I was like, I'm funny, whatever. And even though I seem depressed and horrible in this, I'm really a funny guy, whatever. So it's like open mics on a Tuesdays. You go there with your material. It's only comics. And it's like you still have like drink minimums. So you're buying like 2 drinks or whatever. And you're sitting there with a bunch of comics. Nobody's laughing at anybody's material because like they're pissed if it's a funny joke. If it's not a funny joke, they're like amateur. We're all each other's direct competition. Because if you get time, I don't get headliner time. So we all have to fight each other. And it's the same problem as if you want to be a fighter. It's like everyone's like, hey, you want to fight in front of 8,000 people? Of course I do. You want to show up on Tuesday because someone dropped out, you're not out of shape, but you're going to take it's out of your weight. Like, that's the game. So it's like by doing whatever it is, like it's all the same shit in every single, I want to be that guy. You want to sing at bars for the rest of your life? No, I want to be on the main stage at whatever hall. Well, you're going to be doing bars for forever. So if you do the bars and you're like, or the, the amateur fights or whatever, the guy who loves it and is passionate and will never give up, I could tell him like, that sucks because you had to do it last minute and you were out of your weight class and you had to do this. Yeah, but I got to fight. Okay, then let's go.
I think you just hit a home run, man. I think if it's based truly in love and it's like it's all you see, then you might have a shot at this thing. It's like that's where you almost shake the person's hand and you go, "Good luck." Like it's gonna be rough,
right?
Because I mean, I tell that to everybody that's chasing a dream in here. I'm like, if you think it's gonna be just you get to be a professional athlete and people look up to you and and it's gonna be fun or easy, you're delusional. It's gonna be the most suffering you've had to endure and unbelievable battles within your self-doubt and with society and ridicule and like, why aren't you getting a job? Why don't you go do this? You blah, blah, blah. Like Conor McGregor's an excellent example. 1-bedroom apartment on welfare, plumber's assistant, living in Dublin. He's a failure. To everyone in the family, he is a failure.
Right.
He's training like a madman in the dark, in secret, in this tiny little gym named SBG that has nobody that anyone has ever heard of. They don't have a single fighter that's making waves. They don't have anyone in America there's nobody. You're surrounded by no success, but you're just in the dark grinding. And he had a woman by his side in Dee Devlin that apparently through all of that, it's reminiscent of your story, where that woman was like, it's all right, Connor, you're going to make it. Maybe I have to do your laundry or help you with this or help you with that. When he came home broken, wanting to give up and, well, I should just be able to provide for you. She's like, no, you're going to be a fighter. You're going to do this. Becomes the first, Irish fighter to blow up in the UFC, really blow up. And there was people before him. Double champion, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His own liquor brand is. It's so unlikely. But it's back to that, like, his love, that was it. That was it for him. It was like, I'm going to do this thing. So I think it's hard to – I volunteer for Reaching Higher. I've done it multiple times. Like, it's a mentorship program for kids. I do a bunch – I work with the Livingston County Juvenile Court. I work with young kids that are struggling. And it's so hard to look at them sometimes and not tell them to not chase their dream. Like, because you don't want to watch someone just fall on their face and feel like a loser and a failure and there's a high probability of not making it.
Right.
But I tell you what, every once in a while when I meet a kid that's got that, they've just got something you can't really they just have it.
Right.
I'm like, you need to go for that. Like, your life depends on it. And if you do that, life can turn out pretty incredible. There are no guarantees, but you should chase it, man, if you truly love and desire that path.
Well, and that's why I think, like, the toxic positivity that bothers me is, like, most people don't understand what you just said, so they'll go into these programs with these, troubled youth, and they'll be like, anybody can be this, anybody can. No, they can't. That's bullshit. It's the worst advice you can ever give anybody. What you should do is you guys should all become plumbers or electricians, something easy, not the job's easy, something that the path is easy for that can pay your bills, and then, and if you're like, I will just not quit this thing, then, whatever. But
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so
that's everybody can be everything is really damaging because you put a ton of people in a state where they might believe your words. Now they go for it. They're not fully convicted, and their life turns into shatters. It's just broken down. They're depressed. They didn't make it 10% of the distance that they would have to go.
Right.
And now they're actually set back substantially because they didn't just go to the STEM fields or go get a skilled trade or, go into real estate early on where they could start building connections. 100%, man. Life is just this crazy puzzle.
Right.
And it's, and it's almost like I said, I used the words when I was young, I was delusionally confident. And it's almost like those are the people that can do the crazy things and everyone else. It's like you should consider what is going to at least give me a baseline.
Right.
And then see if you have something there. So, man, Lee, this has been a stellar podcast today.
Thank you.
I mean, you took me through a journey. There was up, down, up, down, up, down, and you're currently in one of the biggest fights of your life. And like I said, the best answer is to keep walking. And I hope that a couple years down the road, 5, 10, 15, you have a huge peak to oppose the valley that you're in right now. You know what I'm saying? And nothing can ever take that away. Like I've experienced a lot of loss in my life, and that's some of the maybe that is in a weird, messed up way. Like the beauty of life is in the fucking finite time we get. We only
Yeah.
get a certain amount of experiences with different people. We only get a certain amount of time with our loved ones. We never know where, tragedy could strike. So we really just got to get up each day, try to be the best versions of ourselves, try to affect the world around us positively, base our life upon something like the truth where, it can kind of be our North Star or our compass, whatever you'd want to call it, and just move forward. You know what I
Right.
mean? And hopefully we set an example for our children and the next generation. So before we wrap this thing up, man, I want you to shout out the real estate company. If anyone loved this episode, they want to reach out to you, they want to know more, just anything, man. I'd love you to plug all your
Yeah.
all your sources.
So yeah, as I work at EXP Realty, I'm based out of the South Lyon area, Novi. So if you need anything, we do investments, we do flips, we do residential and commercial, but primarily residential. So obviously reach out, and something that I take it very seriously as far as like at real estate, there's a lot of scams. There's a lot of bad people out there. There's a lot of mistakes you can make. And my job is literally, it's not to find you the house, it's to keep you from making mistakes and protect you. That's the job. So I really take that part seriously. If anybody's, and I also really, really, really believe in mentorship. So if anybody's thinking about, I have a lot of parents who ask me about their kid wants to be a writer, their kid wants to do something creative, and I can give them the real talk, or I can give the kid the real talk about, hey, I'm thinking about going along this path. What do I do? Because that was the hardest part for me. And again, why I go out of my way to talk about the beginning, where I thought I was a giant failure because I couldn't write the way that existed around me at that time. And now there's a lot more opportunities that exist. Like there was a lady I was talking to who she's like, I've always wanted to be a storyteller, but every time I sit down, and I have all these stories, but every time I sit down to write, I just can't do it. It doesn't come out. And she's like telling me some stories. I'm like, those are really good. Why don't you just do reels on Facebook? And she's like, well, I can do that. I'm like, yeah, you literally just talk in your phone. Like what you just did is what you do, and you just release it. And it's like, I'm not saying you're going to blow up or not blow up, but you can get it out there, right? So there's a lot, if just talking through it, if that helps anybody, like I'm here for that too. The only caveat is be like, I will not sugarcoat it. I'll tell you the truth. But if you can do that, then let's talk. So yeah.
100%. And I got to ask you a quick question. Have you heard of Chat GPT?
No.
You need to go on Google. Trust me.
Okay.
Trust me. Later today, go on Google, type in Chat GPT. Just experiment with it. It's an AI program that is it pulls from all the resources of the internet, and you could say, write me a movie script about Lee, the real estate agent from Brighton, providing for his family through these tough times. And it will, in real time, using artificial intelligence, it will produce that for you. It is like, they just recently released it, and it is revolutionary for people that struggle with writing, but they have incredible ideas, or maybe they have vision, or they have creative talent. It is going to be, in my opinion, one of the biggest game changers in the world. And they just released a prototype to people to kind of show what artificial intelligence is capable of. I was experimenting with it the other day. We were driving back from one of my fights. One of my girls just want to fight. And I was like, write me a poem about Kate, the dragon-slaying female fighter. Like, ridiculous.
Right.
In real time, this artificial intelligence created it. And then I said, turn this into Shakespeare's language. It then took the poem, in real time, continued to make it rhyme using Shakespeare's language. And then I said, make it more exciting with more ups and downs. It then added this. It's revolutionary. So to anyone that's in the creative fields, I've been telling them, like, this is going to change the game, and it's brand new technology. You should experiment with it. It's incredible. It's incredible. Like, as a writer, you could probably pull things from the nether that I couldn't even imagine. So I hope the people that were listening enjoyed the episode today. It was an incredible story. Feel free to reach out to Lee with anything you need. And again, this episode was sponsored by VetLife. We want to thank them.
Yeah.
They make these episodes possible. A lot of time goes into producing these, and they're here for our veterans, man. And if there's anybody that is owed, at least a debt of gratitude from us, it's veterans willing to put their lives on the line for, a cause beyond themselves.